Hi, it's Clark on Temptress. Today we're going to review a very special battery. We have here the Renogy Solid State lithium iron phosphate battery. This is quite a new thing, right? Solid state batteries, we've been hearing about them for years. Let's see how this one stands up. The guys at Renogy sent me this battery, asking me to do a review. I was very happy to receive it, a little proud. I guess there's only 10 of these out for review right now, so I guess I'm making an impact. I'm getting noticed. Thanks, guys. This is their solid state lithium iron phosphate battery. Now, we've been hearing about solid state batteries for a long time. I have, anyway. I know a lot of you have because so many of you have asked me in the comments and such, hey, what do you think about this? Well, it's got a lot of potential. I've been hearing about, the fact that it's going to be safer, it's going to last longer, various things. It's going to be lighter. First off, I got to say one thing. This isn't really a solid state battery. This is what they call a semi-solid state battery. And as I glean from reading the Renogy documentation, this still has some liquid electrolyte and mostly solid electrolyte. So it's 30% liquid electrolyte. Now, probably right now it's the right thing to do. It's the right step because there's still technical problems with the electrolyte being in a solid state. Let's talk about batteries in general real quick, just so we know what electrolyte really is, and then we can understand and judge the difference. Okay, what a battery is two plates, an anode and a cathode. When metal on one side passes to the other side, it causes electrons to have to flow through the rest of the circuit outside of the separation between the two. Now, that's what a battery is, and that's why it can produce power. And if it's a real modern battery, a reversible rechargeable battery, if you apply the electrons, it moves the metal ions back across the gap. Well, that gap just can't be an air gap because, lithium can't jump across air. So it has to be something that the lithium ions can move through. And we call that the electrolyte. And classically, like an old lead battery, that's just sulfuric acid. And the sulfuric acid and water, mostly water, the sulfuric acid is in there to make sure everything stays ionic because it's highly acidic and hydronium ions, keeps everything charged so that in that case the lead can move through the electrolyte. Well, liquid electrolytes have issues, and they can leak out. They can boil if they're water-based, and these are. Lithium iron phosphate batteries are. So, there's a whole slew of other issues. If you could have something that's completely impervious to anything but the flow of the metallic ions, you wouldn't be able to get dendrites, which are like little hairs that form across that can cause the battery to short out internally. Theoretically, if you had like some kind of a ceramic in there, that would be great. But there's downsides, and I'm sure there's a lot of downsides I don't know about, but the ones I know about, or the one I'm going to concentrate on, because I think it's the big one right now, definitely the one that's pertinent to the decisions made by Renogy, is if that was a true solid, you just plain have conductivity issues. In a lab, you could make a perfectly machined ceramic that can do the magic, and you can put the anode and cathode on it perfectly, and yay. But, the world isn't a lab, and things get hot, things get cold, things move around, there's vibration, and I understand that there can be like a delamination that would cause all kinds of problems. So what they've done as a stopgap is there's a technology semi-solid state. And they start out with the solid state, and then they put some liquid electrolyte in there as well. And then that you might get the best of both worlds, but I don't think you get the best of either world. Apparently that's what's ready for prime time now. And that's exciting because, It's like nuclear fusion. We've been told it's 20 years away for like the last 40 years. This has been like a couple years away for like the last 5 or 10 years. It's here. It's on my desk. Pretty cool. Let's get back to the battery itself, though. It's a battery. Let's judge it against the other batteries. It's in a metal case. I recently reviewed a cheap battery in a metal case, and actually I like the metal case. It uses less space. It's actually more rugged and everything, but that metal case was steel. And, you know, in a boat, that would be a bad thing. Well, I've got a nice strong magnet here, and that's a steel container. Listen to this. Whoops, I couldn't even get it to leave my finger. It's non-magnetic. This is an aluminum case, so we don't have to worry about corrosion. We don't have to worry about, you know, dropping it quite so much because aluminum's going to bend where plastic will crack. Theoretically, it would use less space, waste less space on the, not just the plastic, but to make plastic at all rigid, it has to have like fins and things, you know, so it ends up being fairly thick. So I like that. I like the novelty of it, maybe more than anything else, but I like that it's in a metal case. The case is listed as IP67. That means, you know, basically dust isn't going to get in there. And the 7 is for water, and that means you could sink this thing 3 feet, 1 meter underwater for 30 minutes, and it should be fine. Well, that's pretty tough. We don't want to do that with batteries, so you know, that should be fine in a boat. It has Bluetooth, of course. Let me turn the battery around a little bit. We have 3 ports here besides the big terminals, and these 2 are both, you know, that Ethernet type wire, and they're for CAN bus. In and out, so this thing can be daisy chained into a CAN bus system. That's just plain how CAN bus should be used. That's how it works in your car. I'm going to take my watch off. Later we'll open the battery, but also I keep tapping this, making a bunch of noise. Okay, so we've got 2 of those. A lot of batteries will give you like 1 CAN bus connection, and then they do their own daisy chaining communication amongst their batteries with a different kind of a network. This is better. You just have the one. You could have, you know, your Victron gear go off there, and you could even have other Victron gear go off here. It would pass right through. The CAN bus is a communication bus where most anybody can add sentences to it. If you don't understand the sentences, you just ignore them. So you're not going to mess up the Victron or anything. That should be fine. And then we got this little guy in the middle. That is the Bluetooth antenna. So it's in a metal box, kind of sort of a Faraday cage, and this guy is outside of it. So, you know, it can transmit, but still be waterproof. So I think they did all that right. The case itself is, well, it's 120 amp hours. It's 12.8 inches by 7.44 inches by 7.4 inches. The battery weighs 29.5 pounds. The BMS limitations are it can put out 150 amps continuous for a battery of this size. Perfectly reasonable. It's more than 1C. They can put out 350 amps for a full 30 seconds. Usually, you know, they can put out a little more for a little while, but 30 seconds is a fair amount of time. You know, some heat can build up, so that's good on them. They must have used a good stout BMS. And you can charge it, they say, at 120 amps. That would be 1C. And that is supposed to be one of the advantages of the solid state technologies. You can charge them faster. But reading deeper through the Renogy documentation on it, I found where it said recommended charge 60 amps. So 0.5C, and that's what we expect for lithium iron phosphate anyway. I wouldn't charge over 0.5C. You know, that's a lot of power. If you wanted to charge at like 120, 150 amps, you know, from a big alternator, that system would probably have more than one of these. By the way, they also make one of these that's larger, 200 and some amp hours, probably just the big brother, double the cells, you know. Here's what comes in the box. We get the battery itself, we get a manual, and it's a good English, well-written manual. A warranty card. If you like stickers, you get stickers. And then you get this. We get these little feet. The feet can screw onto the side of the case. Here, there are 4 of them. Once they're screwed on, you can now bolt the battery down. The feet are steel. The screws that hold the feet on are steel. The screws that would hold it down are stainless, which is interesting, but it's what it is. I also noticed that the case is screwed together with screws that are not stainless steel. So if it really bothered you, you might want to change out the screws. They're just standard flathead screws. You get 4 actual screws to screw it down. These are a little bit longer. So the ones I have in it now are the short ones if you just want one terminal. But if you want to stack some terminals on, it's always nice to have a little longer screw. The advantages of solid state electrolyte, when I looked it up outside of Renogy, is that they're supposed to be, leak protective. Obviously, can't leak something out that's not a liquid. Way less chance of combustion, which would be like thermal runaway and such. I've never heard of a lithium iron phosphate being a problem in that direction. So are they fixing something and making it better? Yeah, but I don't know if it's even an issue. High temperature stability, that could be an issue. We use these in higher temperature, of course, so the cells are going to get hotter if you're in the tropics. But I guess that would really boil down to you can exercise it harder. More speed of charge and more speed of discharge. That makes heat, but this guy won't puff up quite so quickly and harm its cells. And then finally, the ability to charge at a faster rate. The BMS has cold weather protection, as we would expect for any battery, in the upper echelon. It's getting pretty common now. As soon as it became available in the BMSs, all the battery makers are saying, well, that's another $1. So yeah, we'll put that function in there because we demand it. And that's how we get better batteries. It's not waiting until they give us something great. You, the customer, says, this is what I want. And I'm not buying it unless they just see it in sales. But also, many of you have written the companies and said, I would buy your battery except, and then give them a list of what you want. That matters. That means the next time they have a marketing and technology meeting, the marketers say, we can sell more batteries if you guys can add this feature. So you guys have the power because you guys have the wallet. Use your power. I think my main job here is not just to look at individual batteries and whether they're good or bad. We've brought up topics like, let's make the cases smaller as the cells get smaller. And then that happened. And right now, I'm really on talking about balance because that's what's really lacking right now. It's actually gotten worse in some of the high-end batteries. And let me talk about that now. This battery was really good. It arrived to me just on the edge of what I consider balance. The lowest cell and the highest cell were 0.1 volt out of whack with each other. First, it's like, yes, good news. They might have done some work, or maybe I just got really lucky. And then it occurred to me, yeah, there's 10 of these batteries. Maybe they cherry picked them. Maybe they actually balanced them up before they got to me. So I'm thinking, well, I can't trust that. But luckily, it was 0.1 volt out. So I discharged the battery and recharged the battery and saw virtually no change. So I discharged the battery, and when I say discharge, I only went down a bit because the balance only happens up in those high voltages. And when I recharged it this time, I used my bench power supplies to charge at a very slow speed. And I charged, in my case, at 0.5 amps. So 500 milliamps were going into this thing. I found in their documentation when I dove in a bit deeper that this BMS only balances during the charge cycle. So you have to have it making positive direction before it will activate the charge. So the idea is you give it just a little more than what it consumes in doing the balance. I chose 500 just to see what would happen. And it came well into balance in one more cycle. It got up to this point. So That proves to me that the BMS really, really is doing a good job at balance. So I'm going to give it good marks on the whole balance thing. They chose a BMS that can do the job. Beyond the cold weather protection, I got off topic just a bit there, sorry, but this also has a heating blanket inside. And what happens there is if the battery were to freeze, let's say it was really cold overnight, and then in the morning the sun came out, the battery is still frozen, but your solar panels start producing power. First off, you need some way of keeping that power from being exposed to these poles, exposed to the actual cells, I should say, because if you attempt to charge a frozen lithium iron phosphate battery, you'll destroy the battery. So that's cold weather protection, saying, nope, don't charge me, I'm too cold. But the next step up, which this has, when you have a heating blanket in there, the energy coming in is not allowed to go to the cells, but it's diverted to the heating blanket. And this has a pretty stout heating blanket, 120 watts. So if you give it 10 amps or up to 10 amps, 10 amps of that can go into heating the battery up, which should happen pretty quickly. And there you go. If you're going to use this in cold conditions, I certainly would put some insulation around it so that heating blanket won't lose all of its heat through that aluminum box if it's, continuously cold where the battery is. But that's a pretty good setup. They claim it has that internal fuse that we've seen on the high-end epochs, where it's an active fuse and the BMS can shut down the battery's ability to connect to here kind of permanently by blowing its own fuse. Super, super safe. They're claiming this should have 6,000 cycles. Typically, we kind of expect that lithium iron phosphates would have 4, with some exceptions. And I know that one of the things about solid state is they last longer, so 6 seems reasonable. And they're giving you a 7-year warranty, and that's a company that's been around for a while. They'll probably be around for a while. So as long as you can get a hold of them, I'm sure you can get them to give you a new one if it were to fail, or whatever their policy is. This battery on their website is currently available for pre-order for $719.99. 120 amp hour battery. Not cheap, but it's the coolest, newest toy. They have 6% off if you pre-order it. And when these things get in the country in bulk, you'll be getting one. Let's look inside. Now, I've implied that I haven't looked inside yet, but I'm a liar. I took this panel off earlier and I'm glad I did, because this did not come off easy. This panel is on there. It's an aluminum panel, goes with the kit there. Screws on with lots of screws. They put some adhesive caulk kind of stuff around it, and it was very sticky. I had to pry it off and chisel it a bit. Here's the battery. Let's see if you can see it. I hope you can see it through this camera. So here's the insides. Those are the cell tops. There's 4 cells. The BMS is here, and it's a huge BMS. In fact, the cells stop here. And then the only reason the case had to continue was to hold the BMS itself. So they could make this battery smaller by maybe an inch in height and, like 2.5 inches in this direction, just based on the cells. But they'd have to redesign the BMS. And they've got quite a substantial heatsink here. If I was to consult on the project, I would say give up some heatsink, maybe even fewer MOSFETs, and then count on the fact that you have an aluminum case. So if you can tie into your aluminum case, that's the best heatsink you could possibly imagine. Aluminum is, short of copper, it's kind of the best for moving heat around. Definitely the best per dollar. So maybe later there'll be a smaller version of this. I'm looking at how it's connected up and the cells are retained in. I can see that they're squeezed by an aluminum plate. So they're going to be under some compression, but I don't think the aluminum plate has a lot of rigidity in this direction. It's a long flat plate, so the plate could push out a little bit. Of course, we're counting on these solid states not doing that, so maybe they don't need to be squeezed. I can see how it's bolted in. It's bolted in pretty solidly to the case. That's not going anywhere. They make great comments on how tough it is. They're going to be selling a lot of these for campers and conversion vans and stuff. Apparently, this battery will fit under the seat of the common kind of seats you get in the front of a camper van. So, kind of waste of space being used. That would be really cool. But, you know, you go beating down a road, you need things to not shake. On a boat, we actually have a very gentle world from batteries as far as I'm concerned. I mean, we're out in the waves and bouncing around, but it's kind of like an egg toss. It's a gentle bounce. It's a continuous bounce, but it's a gentle bounce. Where cars, you know, bam, 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 if you go down a washboard highway or down a washboard country road. Wiring-wise, we have 3 7-gauge wires, and for a battery of this size, that's fine. So we've got 3 coming in from the cells, going out to the poles, and it looks like, and it always is, the same amount of copper on the positive pole. Don't know anything else that's worth mentioning on the inside. These are the wires for the heating blanket, obviously. This would be bringing positive to the board so that it can run the heating blanket. And, you know, of course, power the board. What I did in my testing so far is I charged it up with the bank manager, so it went to the proper 100% charge, not overcharged. Then I disconnected the bank manager, charged it directly off my power supplies to overcharge it up into the hockey sticks. That's how I verified that the cells were balanced as they were. I discharged it and recharged it a few times, and then I've already spoken to and saw that it gets itself into balance quite well. Then I discharged it so that I knew it was down, charged it again with the bank manager to precisely 100%, and used this. People have been asking about this, so I'm going to put a link this time to this little tool in the description. This is just a device you can hook to a battery or whatever, and it will burn the power as heat. That's why it has a fan. You can adjust the amp flow. It's nice because it keeps track of the number of amps that have flowed through it. Watts, everything else too, but amps are what's important in this case. And you end up with an amp hour report. Well, I did that, and I got 126 amp hours out of this. They sell it as 120, so, that's good. The only thing I want to do now is I'm going to take a moment to hook an inverter up to this, and then we're going to give it 15 minutes or so of hauling power out of it. We'll look with the thermal camera and see what we see. Okay, got it all hooked up. Let me throw a meter on here, and let's see what we can see. So I'm going to turn on the heater, turn on one side. I get 60 amps, the other side. There we go, 119 and a half, 120. So we got the 120 being drawn out of it. I will start my timer. And we'll come back 15 or 20 minutes and, well, yep, it'll be half depleted by then, but let's see what we see. Okay, well, I've taken about a third of the power out of this, according to the meter here. The app has a weirdness I do want to talk about. You'll notice that the remaining time says that this should be able to continue its job for 7 hours and 12 minutes. Occasionally that number's right, but usually it's wildly wrong, both in charge and discharge. I wouldn't let that bother you. That's just a software thing. They'll send out a new app and that'll go away, because all it is the remaining capacity divided by, the amps that are currently flowing. Anyway, just a weirdness. Anyway, let's take a look at it. Okay, my thermal camera's going. Recording. I often forget to push record. And let's take a look. The hottest thing inside the case is 103 Fahrenheit. And what is that? That's this wire right down here. or that group of wires. Yep, that's 103, not anywhere near painful. Of course I did this with it open, but nothing is warm. I mean, look at my hand comparison. It's operating like I'd expect. This is great. Just a quick look here. There's my inverter and my really crap connection here on the positive side. So this is staying cool as could be. And it's running a space heater. So it's just kind of weird because this room is noticeably warmer just from this battery. Let's go down the leaderboard and see how this thing places itself. Capacity, excellent. It's got more than we pay for, so that's cool. Cells, who knows, right? It's experimental. I mean, they seem fine. They're cooler than the average cell because they're semi-solid state. I don't know about their future, but I don't have any reason to think they don't work. Let's give them extra points because they're cool. So excellent there. Build quality. This is usually where I put the BMS into it. This BMS does everything I'd want it to do. It's physically larger than I would like, but that doesn't matter as long as you can fit the case where it goes. Huge heatsink and a finned heatsink at that. When you look at the thermals, this was like cooler than, it was almost ambient room temperature. So I can't complain about anything with the BMS and the general build quality of this. I like that it's an aluminum case. I like that a lot. Love the feet. Well, I got ahead of myself. Case. Okay, I'll just repeat that. Like the aluminum case, like the feet. Love. So excellent there too. Company. Boy, I wish I could just say great. I get people feeding back to me, my customers, my viewers, whatever. And I've never heard anybody say, oh, that Renogy company, they were right on it. When I contacted them, they helped me out great. What I usually get is more on the order of, oh, God, thanks, Clark. You answered all my questions. I have this Renogy system, and I asked them first, and I can't get a hold of them, and they won't respond. So I think they make good stuff. I've owned Renogy stuff in the past. It functions just fine. It's kind of, I'm not going to give them discs because they make good stuff, but I don't think their customer service is stellar. So we'll give them a good. And then we get down to cost to value. Not a cheap battery, but I think it's the only game in town if you want to have that semi-solid state and those advantages. If you want to be on the cutting edge and, have the cool stuff, this is what you've got to do. The case is tremendous. I don't know. I'm looking at the edges of it, because I weld and such. I don't know how they made it because everything rolls in. It almost seems like it had to be welded up. Perfectly smooth, just really nice. It's a nice piece of kit I'd be proud to own. And if I had a camper and this fit under the seat, I really, really want it for that reason. That's kind of one of the things they sell it as. It's one of those extreme batteries. So if money doesn't matter as much to you, excellent. I'm going to give them an excellent. If you're trying to save your pennies to do other things with them, you probably don't want this. You probably want to wait at least for the semi-solid states or the true solid states to have been out for a couple years. Now, I wouldn't say that if we were living in the world of lead right now, because lithium is so much better than lead that you should take risks. You should have spent some money and gone that way. But right now, regular lithium iron phosphate, the liquid electrolyte, are cheaper than lead. I've got a battery coming up that is like so cheap. It's just amazing. And they do a great job, So I usually use the analogy, if it was like 1995 and you have a 1-year-old computer and a new one comes out that's faster, you wanted it because your computer was too slow. It was making your life miserable. And just to be that 30% faster was huge, was important, and you wanted it. But even that one wasn't fast enough. That was like lead, so when lithium came out, you wanted it. But now that we have lithium, which is kind of like a modern computer that they're all pretty fast. Yeah, sure, the newest one might be 10% faster or something, but it's already fast enough. So it sends lithium iron phosphate floodeds, or not floodeds, I don't know what to call them, liquid electrolyte, are great. It may not be worth going for this yet. But if you like cutting edge, if you like cool, this is cutting edge, this is cool, and there is like nothing I can see wrong with this battery, and I think it's pretty cool. Well, that's my review for the Renogy 120 amp hour semi-solid state battery. Hope you enjoyed it, learned something along the way. I know I did. I've been looking forward to this coming in, and I'm getting this video out tomorrow because I'm hoping I'm one of the first ones to get one out on it. And if you came here for the first time to my channel and you haven't seen my reviews before, I hope you like them. I hope you see that I go a little deeper, look into balance and such. I've got a lot of other videos that people do like. I'm coming up on that 100,000 subscribers, and you could really help me out if you click subscribe and maybe watch some of my other videos. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Bye from Clark on Temptress.